I'm R. Alan Brooks, and you're watching Generally Nerdy.
Sequence start 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition. I would like to introduce
Generally Nerdy.
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 All right, nerds. Thank you once again for sitting down with Generally Nerdy. We have R. Alan Brooks for this interview, and I did a lot of research. I was really anticipating this being a much longer conversation. That being said, it was not as long as anticipated because we got cut short because Media Room is what it is. Comic-Con happens, as is life. So there were some things in the first half of this. We do get a little political, just so you knows. But I felt like he was a good person to address such things and to kind of have a dialogue with about such things. So just know that that was not the intention of this interview, even though it does kind of lean heavily that direction because, again, we get cut short. The second half of this interview was much more fun, or the latter portion of this interview, much more fun, and that's what I wanted the whole interview to be. So hopefully he will come back for a proper discussion in a different format. And that being said, here is R. Alan Brooks. Rock and roll. All right. I love your speaking voice as well, by the way.
Thanks.
Which I find, and we're just going to jump right into this just because, again, conversation. I just find some of the interviews that you do, or that you've done recently, relatively recently, because COVID was a thing, and you did a couple like Zoom calls. You had the horror guy do his first Zoom call.
Is that Crozier?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
And so like I feel like your delightful speaking voice just doesn't come through as well as it should.
Not on Zoom, really?
Yeah, right. All right. So I apologize. I'm gonna look at the camera and say this one. I apologize if I'm reading from the notes. I just get nervous, and especially when I'm talking to somebody as well spoken as Brooks. So we're gonna do, like I said before, we're gonna start with the silly, hard-hitting stuff, and then get to the actual conversation we want to have, just because I feel like if certain people come across this video and that doesn't get addressed, then I'm gonna get called names that aren't fair or valid. So Ithaca, New York is where you're born.
Yes.
You moved from Ithaca when you were how old?
Maybe like one.
Oh, so you don't remember upstate
No.
really at all? Because my girlfriend is from there, so I was going to ask you that stuff, but that's irrelevant.
My parents went to school there.
Oh.
Cornell. That's
Right.
Yeah, so.
As we can all see, you are a black man, and I just had a funny thing to kind of cut that one. Do you get what I call the Mark Bernardin effect at all? Like people who hear you speak before they see you and are surprised that you are a black man?
No.
Really?
No, I mean, I think I carry enough of my Southern swagger.
Fair enough, man.
So that
Fair
people
enough.
can tell.
You know who Mark Bernardin is, yes? Yeah. It was shocking to me when people were like, "Wait, he's black? Like, how do you not?" Obviously, okay, whatever. So moving on. Again, we're gonna just hit these rapid fire. Comic-Con in Georgia, because you did live in Georgia for a while. You went to Comic-Con with your friend when you were kids. Again, if you want to hear the backstory of all of this stuff, YouTube is a thing. You said that you and your friend were the only two black people at Comic-Con in Atlanta?
Yeah, it was Atlanta Fantasy Fair. This was the 80s.
Pre-Dragon Con.
Yeah, it was before Dragon Con. And so, I mean, a comic convention would have like 300 people, you know.
Touche.
Yeah, so we would have, we would be the only black people and the only kids.
Wow.
Yeah, and my mother just happened to see it in the paper and was like, "You think you would like to go to a comic convention?" Because she knew I was in the comics.
Right.
And I was like, "Yeah." And she dropped us off, which you could do back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we would go. But I've told this story before, but I do remember that when I was like 11, I was asking like a white patron of the Fantasy Fair, like which room to go to, and he so I was like, hey, are you part of the convention? And he thought that I was like security, like checking his badge. And I was like, I'm 11. But,
I was gonna have you elaborate on that, because that's the one that you did touch on. Like, how could were you like a tall 11?
No.
Like, no, stereotypical scrawny little.
Maybe he just
thing.
maybe he just could not see me as being part of the convention. I don't know.
Right, something that's really interesting.
Yeah.
We're almost to the end of the boring parts. I also need to interject into this. I need to give you all the props for doing your research when you write your books. Specifically, I'm gonna forget. Anguish Garden is the one about the leaving white supremacy, right?
Yeah.
You did research into like Blue Lives Matter, you said, is that the book that was for, or is it?
No, that was
I might be conflating.
that was the Burning Metronome.
Burning Metronome. Okay.
Yeah, because I dealt with
which was the first
brutality.
book.
Yeah, and I have a friend who I grew up with who's a black cop in the South, and so I asked him kind of like what his experience was before writing the story. Because I think it's boring to try to write something just from one perspective. I think usually people have reasons for doing what they do, even if they're evil reasons.
Yeah. I mean, but like the fact that you can recognize that and try to see the other side, I think is a step that most people who with a similar political mindset as you don't do. Mm-hmm. Especially people who are vocal in this community or vocal in the online community in general.
Online, yeah.
And that's kind of the conversation I had with Chaz, was like, we need to stop judging the health of our community based on online interactions, because that is a caricature of a caricature that is overemphasized and just garbage, effectively.
Yeah.
So, Christmas death threat, you got, I say it so casually. You got a write-up in a Denver paper that got posted on Christmas Day, and the same day, you got a death threat because you're a black man who writes comic books, effectively.
Yeah.
And you aligned this guy with Comicsgate. Is that something that he came out and said, or was this?
Yeah, he was Comicsgate. So I wrote it was just an announcement that I was writing Anguish Garden.
Right, which is a great premise for a story, by the way.
Right.
I think that's amazing. Anyway,
Thanks.
Continue. I apologize.
So for people who know, it's just an allegory for leaving white supremacist movement. So it's not, white supremacists don't even actually appear in the story.
Right, they don't factor into it literally at all.
But the announcement was enough to make somebody send me death threats on Christmas morning. And it was Instagram from like an anonymous account.
Oh my God.
And like he hashtag Comicsgate. He was trying to sick them all on me.
Oh my God.
They're like, Comicsgate, come get this guy.
So the reason I specifically called out the Comicsgate thing is because I need to preface the preface. I do not identify as a comic skater. I'm not trying to apologize for any of the fringe comic skaters. I feel like it should be known that Comicsgate is I don't even want to call it a movement necessarily, but it is a grouping of people who, like any other grouping of people, have fringe elements. Their fringe elements just really, really suck. And I feel like that's why I wanted to know if he actually identified himself as such, or if the assumption was made.
And they're quoted in Westward, like the death threats. And there's an article about me. So did he hashtag Comicsgate, and
let's get into this for just a second. Did anybody else chime in, or was it just this one guy?
Just this one person. Yeah.
So I feel like, and I'm treading very lightly here, I feel like that should be indicative of like the average person who identifies or who understands where Comicsgate comes from, and not the hyper polarized version that is been put out there that, they hate women and that's where it comes from. That's not where it comes from. It's a journalism ethics origin. There was a
Well, it's good to
From my understanding of
have
it,
somebody
again,
bravely stand up and sort of defend comics.
I'm not. I am not by any means.
You're sort of defending them.
I'm defending. I'm defending the people. Yes.
Okay.
I am defending the people who identify with Comicsgate, who simply identify as such because they want good stories over politics.
All right, but so there's Watergate,
Right.
which wasn't a good thing, right?
Right.
And there was Gamergate.
Which also was a journalism ethics issue.
Okay, but if they go under the name of something that's
It's
a
stupid.
scandal,
No, absolutely. And
Yeah.
and I don't think anybody.
And then Comicsgate went under the same.
Right, no,
kind of name.
understood.
Yeah.
Totally understood.
And really, I mean, my only experiences, or
I have been negative.
yes, personally, and seeing like them harass women who are comics writers
Again,
on Twitter.
So
Like, yeah, I haven't. I've seen Ethan Van Sciver, and I know his brother Noah. Noah's cool. But
Right.
like, yeah, I certainly haven't seen.
I
any
feel like if
positive
Ethan,
element.
sure, and like any movement, the neutral, because I don't know that there is a whole lot of positive. Again, I do not identify as comics or Gamergate. I feel like I understand it in a different way than most, but that's not to say that I think they're right necessarily. But I feel like if Ethan, even who is the face effectively, or your boy Zach, I can't remember his actual name, who's also in the industry, those two are kind of the face and the voice of what people identify as Comicsgate. I feel like if they were in a conversation with a man such as yourself, it would be a very different narrative. Like, I don't think they would come at you with hate at all. But again, I think we're going off on a bird walking, and this is not what I wanted to talk about for the majority of it. Like I told you at the beginning, I just feel like it should be made aware that just like any group with fringe elements, the fringe elements are loud and stupid.
I would just
and
disagree with you there. It's a
That's
fringe
fair.
element.
That's fair.
It is the loudest and most defining voice of this movement.
And
if people want to do something different, then they need to.
then
pick
they
another
should.
movement.
And I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
I think that most, if not 90 to 100% of the press that both of those movements get is absolutely negative. And the people who view it similarly to the way I do, who actually identify with these groups, should be more vocal. Because all they're getting is negative press. And I 100% agree with you. But again, I don't think that they are doing enough, which is why the movement is garbage.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth mentioning that we're doing this interview the night after white supremacists kill people in Buffalo.
I heard about that last night.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
So, that happened last night.
Yeah. I heard about that when I got home last night.
It was a white guy, 18 years old.
18 years old and
He
killed
drove
like
3 hours. He researched the black area of Buffalo.
Yeah.
Drove 3 hours to kill people in a supermarket.
Yeah.
So like,
and something like 13 people got shot and like 9 of them died.
10 people died.
10 of them died. There you go.
3 more injured.
That's insane, man.
So I'm just saying, like, this element of white supremacy that
is not there,
which is found in comics.
Sure. Yes.
I don't want to be like gentle with them.
No,
I don't want to be
absolutely
like, hey,
not.
you're a good comic skater.
I think
there's a loud vocal majority of people who identify with Comicsgate and either are okay with the fringe element or are part of it. And if you're not okay with it, then they need to do more.
100% agreed. 100%. And I feel like that's part of why I wanted to bring it up. Fair?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got hung up on the shooting. That was just fucking bonkers. That's horrible. Again, my girlfriend's from a area close to that, and she was not super surprised when she heard it, to be 100%, because that's kind of rural mentality, unfortunately, and it sucks, and it's garbage, and it needs to be eliminated. And we're just going to move from that away from the stupid stuff. But we already touched on Blue Lives Matter. So that's all of the stuff I didn't want to talk about, but I felt like needed to be addressed.
All right.
So let's start with a fun conversation in science fiction as allegory. You touched on this in an interview that you did. I don't remember. I didn't write down what the interview was, but I think that's something that I feel like a lot of modern, because the Anguish Garden is that, and because the Burning Metronome is that in so many, in no certain way. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that needs to be appreciated more in science fiction, instead of just writing a space opera that doesn't really say anything. I think that's a missed opportunity a lot of writers don't take. you have authors specifically you referenced. Oh God, I'm gonna brain fart his name. Twilight Zone.
Rod Serling.
Good Lord, thank you. Rod Serling, very specifically. So what do you think of the adaptations that have tried to do what Serling did in like the 80s, and then they tried again in the 90s, and then Jordan Peele just did his, which was an enjoyable series. I really dug it. I don't know necessarily that I would have called it a Twilight Zone series, but...
So when I read about Rod Serling specifically, he was in television for maybe 12 years before Twilight Zone.
Right.
And he wanted to write about racism, war, sexism, etc. And he constantly got censored. He tried to write about Emmett Till's lynching, and he got censored. And basically he would get censored, and he would go to the news and be like, I tried to write about Emmett Till, and they censored me. So they called him the angry young man of television. And after over a decade of fighting that battle, he happened upon the idea that if he writes his stories under fantasy or sci-fi, he won't get censored. He was not a fan of fantasy or sci-fi.
Which I find incredibly interesting.
Right. So for him, though the genre was a tool to talk about real things. And I think when people adapt the show, like in the 80s and the early 2000s, they focus on the twist.
Right.
And forget that he actually wanted to talk about real things.
Right.
With the Jordan Peele show, I think that there is the part of wanting to talk about real things.
Yeah.
But a lot of the episodes, basically every Twilight Zone episode is you meet people, you find out what their personal conflict is, and then there's a supernatural conflict that is a reflection of whatever their personal conflict is. Right. And then there's the twist. Right. That's the formula. That's how they all go, right? So the most recent one did not do very well with building up the personal conflict on a lot of the episodes. They just went straight to like the political view and a twist, you know?
Right.
So it's like a 3-part recipe.
And he was missing one, whereas the other adaptations were missing 2.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is why I was like, I mean, I dig it, but like I just felt like, and thank you for putting it so eloquently, because I couldn't place the 3 elements. You know what I mean? Like it just felt like something was missing, and I couldn't verbalize what that something was. So yeah, that's absolutely 100%. Is this an area that you think gets explored in a meaningful way in like because obviously there's plenty of writers and there's plenty of people who do this in meaningful ways, but a lot of them don't have a big enough platform to be well known in the conversation. Is this something that you feel like you see reflected in, like, let's say a big Marvel movie or one of the big 2 comic book publishers? Do you think this gets used properly, or is this something that people skip over?
Well, no. Okay, so
the allegory.
I think that there is something to be said for art as escapism.
Sure. Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Like I've talked with like I hosted a podcast for a number of years. I talked to like
motherfucker with the cape.
Yeah. I talked.
It's okay. We can say fuck. I've said it at least once.
Nice. So I talked to Brian Azzarello and I talked to Alan Davis.
Oh, you got to talk to Azzarello? That's awesome.
And so like Azzarello is very much like these stories need to mean something. They need to say something about the world.
Right. I'm a big Azzarello fan. Absolutely.
I tend to be like. Alan Davis is like, I'm just making comics to make for fun.
So people can get away from their day.
And I think both, are good. Like, I don't feel like somebody should be shamed into like injecting some kind of social commentary. But
there should be a balance.
I mean, I think for me, like, I like to do it. Like, but I don't think everybody should have to do that, because I don't know. I mean, like the beauty of art is that it can take something intangible and make it tangible so that we can like wrestle with it and understand it and work through it. But also it can give you a moment of respite. Like you don't have to like, if you're having a hard life, you don't necessarily want to read or watch something with people having
you don't want to
read
Batman Black.
Yeah. Or, so you can jump into like My Little Pony or whatever it is.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I love Weird Al Yankovic. And Weird Al Yankovic
I love that you dropped that and I didn't have to bring it up.
Okay. Yeah, so Weird Al Yankovic is not like I'm not looking to him for like social commentary,
Right.
But certainly, like, there's such pure silliness and joy in what he does. It allows me to escape and feel better about things. You know, I often joke that Weird Al is the way. Weird Al Yankovic, WAY.
That's great. That's awesome.
In fact, the only episode of My Little Pony that I watch is because he did a voice. He was the party pony.
Did you watch Yo Gabba Gabba?
No,
He
he's on there.
had something. I'm pretty sure he was on an episode, but I think he also produced. And one of the Bat Commander, MC Bat Commander from the Aquabats, also is the producer. I think he might have even been the showrunner for Yo Gabba Gabba, but totally for like 5-year-olds. So it's not surprising.
Yeah.
I derailed. Weird Al. Oh, have you seen the movie that they're doing with Daniel Radcliffe?
Yeah.
As have you seen? Oh my God,
Looks great.
Like the behind the scenes shots of yeah. I love Weird Al as well. I put him on at work and people look at me funny and it's like, I don't care. This is hilarious and wholesome. So
my first real show at Red Rocks was Weird Al. He was doing a tour called Strings Attached.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and so every city he would perform with the local symphony.
That's
So it
cool.
was the Colorado Symphony Orchestra. They did all the songs, and it was at Red Rocks, and it was great. And I saw all these people that I didn't know were Weird Al fans. I felt like they were like closet Weird Al fans.
Yeah.
And they were all there, and I was like, "You are here, you're here." So,
Like, yo, when I see you tomorrow.
right.
And he also did Denver Comic Con.
Oh yeah,
2018,
yeah. I couldn't
17,
get away
something
from my
like that.
table to meet
You were
him.
there. I was going to ask if you were there.
At a table, but I met a cosplayer who just came back from meeting him, and he was cosplaying as Weird Al and had his accordion signed. And so I was like, this is almost like meeting him. But I'm going to meet him in September because I paid for a meet and greet. He's coming to Colorado Springs.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. How much time do we have before they come up?
We're going to need to start wrapping up here in a minute so we can get the room ready for the next couple of interviews.
Are they okay?
I
Okay.
don't know exactly, but
Fair enough.
just wrap it up.
Okay.
So,
I really wanted to steer this way, but we don't have the time, so I'm just going to ask the last question because they're pushing us out of the room. This is the last year for StarFest. It sucks. Is this endemic of the nerd culture not being as popular, or do you think this is just a way for the nerd culture to grow in different ways that StarFest necessarily? I mean, they've been doing this for a long time. They got to rest sometime, right? So where do you fall on this?
Oh, I don't know that I'm qualified to answer that. I mean, I certainly have lived my whole life where nerd culture was subculture, and it's not anymore.
Right.
So, I mean, that's cool. And I don't know that the demise of StarFest reflects that in any particular way.
Sure.
I think people do things and then they don't do them after a while.
Fair enough.
'Cause it's certainly not a lack of interest.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As evidenced by the fact that it takes 20 minutes to get up the elevator.
Exactly. Yeah, seriously. So, yeah, I don't know what the future of any of that is, but I wish everyone well who's been a part of StarFest.
All right, Brooks. I appreciate you sitting down with me, man. I wish we hadn't wasted so much time on the unpleasant bits because there's such a better conversation that I wanted to have. Again, it is the nature of Comic-Con. Comic-Con happens, and we just got to roll with the punches. So I appreciate you, sir.
Yeah,
I really
you.
like that idea for Anguish Garden. I think I'm going to buy that book from you at your booth later.
That's the right decision.
And yeah, Joe, where can we find you? And then we're gonna kill it.
R. Allen Writes on pretty much everything. Allen is 4 letters, ALAN, 4 letters more better. So RAllenWrites.com, at R. Allen Writes on Instagram. I'm terrible at Twitter, but I'm on there too.
Fair enough. Mark and Roman, thank you very much.
All right, on. Thanks.
And that is R. Allen Brooks. Again, really awesome dude. Hope he comes back so we can fully do the fun part now that the crappy part's out of the way. So, that is, thank you once again, nerds, for sitting down with Generally Nerdy. There is now going to be, I just, as I was filming these intros and outros, was able to get another interview. So I have more intros and outros to do, and there's another interview coming at the very least. So that is coming very soon. So stay tuned, thumbs up, subscribe, all of the silly nonsense. Before we head out, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.